Hi, I'm Meghna Apparao, Chief Business Officer at Licious, an online direct to consumer meat and seafood brand that we're building in India. Before this, I worked for about 20 years across e commerce and the FMCG industry, building brands, driving categories, launching new products in new markets across the world. Very excited to be here for this session as a part of the MMA Impact uh, Modern Marketers Perspective series. What we'll be talking about today is how to build an inspirational consumer centric culture. And I'm quite excited to spend the time with you folks sharing my thoughts on this topic. So, as you can see, this is one of those things which is very, very critical and fundamental to brand and business building is the consumer centricity. And in this new age, the data oriented culture. And I'm going to piece together a few thoughts of my experiences on both of these topics coming together to make us much better marketers. The very first thing that I like to talk about is on customer centricity. I really like this term customer obsession. Now, the word customer is used interchangeably. In the tech world, we call them customers. In an FMCG world, we typically call them consumers. So treat it as the same term. But what I really like is this word obsession. It's not just about focus. It's not just about putting them first. But this entire piece about customer obsession, at least to me, rings very true that every moment you're thinking about them, you're seeing whether the impact of your actions has a positive impact on them. So if there's one word that you take away from here, is this term customer obsession. To be able to ask yourself as you bring yourself to work and everything that you do, is that customer obsessed? Now, to be customer obsessed, I think one of the most fundamental pillars is about who is responsible for this. And I think the answer to that is actually all of us. When I say all of us, it's each and every one of us in our role as brand builders and marketers. But at the same time, it's about taking people along across our partner teams, be it the various agencies that we work with in terms of communication, etc. It can also be the folks that we work with in R&D, in supply chain, in sales, because every one of them is influencing a key touch point for our consumers. And hence, as marketers, holding the pole or bar high in ensuring that every element of your entire mix comes alive in a perfect manner is your responsibility, but also driving this feeling and philosophy across the organization that this is not the responsibility of one marketing department, but of every single person is very critical. Segueing into that is the piece about the voice of the customer, which I want to talk about. Now, the voice of the customer is your role and my role and our role in ensuring we represent the consumer and the consumer insights, the consumer realities, the consumer needs, wants in the most appropriate manner across all the forums that we operate in to make sure that we take the right decision. But one of the learnings that I've had is very often we make the mistake of assuming that the few customers that we may have met ourselves or many customers that we have met ourselves and sometimes even ourselves at customers, that our voice is what matters. But that's where I have a very big watch out. When we walk into the room, we are not the customer ourselves. We have to remove that hat and instead wear on the hat that you are representing the voice of the hundreds of people who buy your products every day. And I'm going to do a little test to check and see how you do on this. And we're going to do this online, which means that it's going to be a bit of an honor code, but you'll see how this goes. Let's have a little bit of fun. Now, coming up on your screen are a bunch of really famous people. I want you to score yourself. There are 5 pictures there. Give yourself a 1 point for guessing the person right and 0 if you get the person wrong. So take a minute, look at every picture, score yourself. It can be the name of the person or the name of the character, anything's fine. Okay, I'm sure you've all scored yourself now. Let me reveal the answers. So this is who they are. Yeah. Be it Jacinda, who's the PM of New Zealand, um, Robert Downing Jr. or Iron Man, your choice, Steve Jobs, Serena Williams, and Ariana Grande. Now, many of you would have got a 5. Maybe some of you would have got a 4. Yeah, depending on what genre of music you're listening to or how much you are into politics. But you'd probably think that's pretty good. You have a good pulse of who are the popular culture figures out there. While you do that, I want you to take one more test. Look at this set of people and now rate yourself on a scale of 4. Who do you think these people are? Now that you've rated yourself, I must tell you the statistics. Yeah, the statistics are every time I've shared this in a forum with very similar genre of pictures, it would be a very big deal, even if you got a score of 1. Before you figure where you are, this is what you can look at. So this is Arun Govind, who plays the character of Ram in Ramayana. Kesaralal Yadav, who's a very famous Bhojpuri actor. Mahesh Babu, who's a top Telugu movie star. And Anguri Bhabi. If you got anything less than 4 out of 4 on this one, it's a moment to pause and think. And why? As a marketer in India, we are serving a very, very, very heterogeneous mix of people, cutting across prop strata, across cultures, across states, across regions, with very distinct preferences, and creating and building for this very wide set of marketers. I've used a popular culture example as one reference point, but in the industry that I work in, which is in food and meat, depending on which part of the country you're in, the type of fish the person eats, the way that fish is sliced or cut or served to you, the recipe that's made out of it, everything varies. It varies not just from a very north of India to the south of India. It varies between a Chennai and a Coimbatore, or a Chennai and a Bangalore. All of these very, very geographically kind of close in nature. So what I want you to use this example to think of is how clued in are you into what your customer or your consumer is watching. So popular culture is a reference of that. Similarly, what are they using? What are their need gaps? And how close are you to understanding that in detail and then representing that back effectively in the forums where you take these decisions? Moving on from here to another point is it's about data. Yeah, we've heard this a lot, and especially I come from a tech-led consumer product industry. We are always talking about data. There's so much of data out there. Digital has a lot of data. Does the data matter? Of course it matters. But the point I want to make is how do we look at that data? It's very important, in my experience, to do both these things. One, to be able to go into depth on the data, to cull out the real insights. And how do you make those choices to ensure that you're not making a wrong hypothesis? Yeah, so going deep into the data is very critical. The second piece is also something quite new, which I'm going to call out, is about a random period of time analysis on data. Don't only look at data on a weekly cycle, monthly cycle, see those trends in a very linear fashion. While you do that for your core metrics, at different points of random moments, you should pick up key themes and go very deep into those. And especially in today's COVID impacted world, when everything is changing, consumer behavior patterns over the many years have taken drastic turns. It's very important to watch out and see whether there are patterns that are emerging which are new. And all of that is possible only if you do random checks on the data that you're using. So while we talk a lot about the data, the other very important point that I like to make is on the anecdotes or the qualitative insights that people look for. The anecdotes also do matter. It's not sufficient to just look at the quantitative numbers which are available to you, to me, to any research agency which publishes kind of panel information. It's also very important to have that rich qualitative connect, to listen to your voice of your consumers, look for that pattern. And to me, the data part is the logic, the anecdotes part is the magic. So, as true blooded marketers, if you're connected into the qualitative understanding of your consumers, being able to pick up those anecdotes, marry that with the data, that's when we are able to create something spectacular. So, what I would urge you in these times is to keep your ears to the ground, hear and listen to, and be a part of all kinds of conversations so that you're listening and identifying these new nuggets and building on those to be able to create transformational marketing mixes. Now, I'd like to share three learnings from my experience on where we've used a combination of consumer centricity, a lot of data, and done something which can make a meaningful difference to the business. The first one I'd like to call out is trade up, not trade off. Now, when people make choices, right, we often refer to things as hard choices. You know, I have to cut my budget, I have to optimize my mix, I have to reduce something. But the reality, I think, in this is if you dig deeper, if you truly understand your consumer, you're able to make these choices in a manner that it may actually be better for the customer. And let me give you an example on this one. So at Licious, while we deliver meat at home using our online app as well as our own last mile system, one of the key promises of the brand has always been what we call express delivery, wherein you can order meat off our app sitting here right now. And in somewhere between 90 to 120 minutes, you will have the product delivered at home. So this is a very valuable benefit that our consumers love because it reassures them on the freshness of the product that we sell. And if you're having hunger pangs and you want to eat a yummy chicken seekh kebab from Licious, it's only 90 minutes before it gets to you. Now, while this is a very critical promise, what happened during the early stages of the first lockdown was there was a huge surge in demand, and our last mile fleet of delivery associates was very much in short supply. So we are trying to figure out how do we manage this. And one thing which then came up through our conversations is what has happened during lockdown is people are all at home, they're not stepping away to work, which means they're much more accessible through the day. And second, cooking up meals for your family or for yourself is a much more planned item because you have to manage home and work and all of this together. So our consumers are quite comfortable in placing orders ahead of time. They're not making a decision that, 90 minutes later, I want to rustle something up. They're making a choice on what will we eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe even the previous day. So we took this call and we paused our express delivery orders, instead used all that capacity to more than triple what we call our scheduled or slotted orders, where we take an order in advance. And by doing this, we were able to serve a lot more consumers who could enjoy high quality branded meat in the safety of their homes, while at the same time delivering higher revenues and at better margins. So I think this is an example of how if you keep your ears to the ground and understand your consumer, sometimes you're able to make choices. And in fact, every time you should be able to make the choice that you never have to trade off and instead you're only trading up. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing I wanted to share was saying sorry. I think this is heavily underrated, and which is why I've used this graph as data to show you an example of this is how it pans out over multiple user studies which have been conducted on this topic. There will be times when we as marketers and brand builders may make a mistake, especially at a time when everything is going somewhat awry. The chances of it happening may even be higher. It doesn't matter whether you're a product brand or a service brand. Of course, for a service brand, it becomes even more critical. The reality is customers and consumers appreciate authenticity and transparency. If they've had multiple experiences with you where they've had a good experience and one experience goes wrong, Will they forgive you? The answer is probably yes. But how can you use that opportunity to actually build a stronger and more powerful brand? How do you use that opportunity to not just hold on to your customer, but actually make them fall in love with you even more? This is an example of that. So every time, for example, at Licious, you face an issue which comes to our notice, we have a very strong program in place of being able to reach out to the consumer, understand their problems. Sometimes it's as simple as a refund of an order which went wrong. And many a time, it's more about the empathetic voice to listen and acknowledge the mistake that may have happened and the reassurance of it not happening again. And for that, we have very strong mechanisms in place, which we try very hard to ensure are well implemented. Is keeping a track of dissatisfied customers or customers who had a service failure and making sure that their following orders don't have the same experience. And that is something that I've seen in real life panning out, this curve that you see. We're saying sorry at the right time, in the right manner, with empathy and authenticity, and rectifying the mistakes to make sure that they don't reoccur, ideally for anyone at all. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed listening to a few nuggets that I had to share. And it was wonderful speaking to you here.